The city of Pittsburgh welcomed in the largest draft in the history of the NFL just last weekend. Over 800,000 people came to the North Shore over the course of 3 days to witness the NFL draft of 2026. And I got to tell you, David, I got some FOMO. I am upset, to say the least, that I was not able to attend. And I guess being in striking distance might make it a little bit worse for me, but I assume that you're probably in the same boat, just seeing all the pictures and the videos, and specifically the intro before the Steelers made their first round selection.
Yeah, I think that was bringing on all the FOMO. Like, just when they first showed the river and the stadium and the setup, I was like, wow. I was like, that's really cool. Like, they couldn't have done that any better. And then one of my favorite sights, I think, to see, just like ever, is Heinz Field when it's setting off fireworks. And so when it set off fireworks during the national anthem, I was just like, oh, like that's the dream. And like, just the gold was everywhere. The design of the stage itself, just, all the gold and the steel, is just like it was perfect. And it was so cool to break history, and just, man, Pittsburgh is just the best.
I agree. And I think that a lot of people just around the NFL world and around the United States in general saw what Pittsburgh was all about. And I love the fact that they stuck to their roots in pretty much all of the production. I mean, you talk about how like they had the gold and the steel that was very reminiscent of the bridges in Pittsburgh. Like I just thought that the whole production was amazing. And then on top of that, playing that awesome Renegade video right before the first round pick. I mean, that was one of those moments where, I mean, I had FOMO before just seeing the big crowd in the first round, but that was the moment I was like, oh my gosh, I wish I was there. I can't believe I didn't find a way to go.
Yeah. The Renegade moment was so perfect. The highlights were so perfect. And yeah, Jerome Bettis coming out, being the guy. I mean, not only that, they brought out so many Steelers. And it was like, I thought, honestly, maybe my favorite part was how, like, once they did the announcement, once they made the pick, and all our Hall of Famers started walking back, like how the players were interacting with each other. Like Hines and Ben went right to each other and hugged each other, and they were just chatting it up. And like Terry Bradshaw, I think he was talking to Roger Goodell, but like a couple of the other players, like it was just really cool to see like the brotherhood that is in this team. And it was just like, man, like I don't want to be any other fan than a Steelers fan.
I can't imagine being another fan of a different NFL team. And I've thought of that, like, different times in my life. And I'm like, what would it be like if I was a fan of this team or this team? And at the end of the day, I look at it, I'm just like, I'm a Steelers fan, and I will never be anything but a Steelers fan. No matter the highs and the lows, as we know, there are several of those, but it's so cool to be a Steelers fan, and I wouldn't trade it for anything else. Now, let's talk about this draft, because it's interesting. It's interesting what ended up panning out, and I don't think we have to look very far to see that there were some complications, to say the least. Let's talk about this whole Mackay Lemon with the Eagles and all about that type of stuff.
Yeah. So if you don't know out there, the Steelers pick 21. We're gearing up, actually on the phone with Mackay Lemon. He was going to be our choice. He was going to be our guy, which I have my own opinions on, let alone. And then the Eagles come flying in, and out of nowhere, them in Dallas do a quick swap, and they get Mackay Lemon. And so we're set in shambles, and we're on the clock, and we have to choose. And the guy that we were just on the phone with, we could no longer pick. And that really, like, kind of ruined the first round, and I think ruined a little bit of our draft, because as much as I loved the draft being in Pittsburgh, I feel like this draft as a whole, like, was so underwhelming. If the draft wasn't in Pittsburgh, I would have said this draft stunk. But I feel like because it was in Pittsburgh, I still like have a lot of like good feelings about it.
Yeah, that's interesting, and I want to be careful to not buy into the nostalgia factor of the fact that, like you said, it is in Pittsburgh, and sure, we have to find these next franchise guys when it's in Pittsburgh. But the fact of the matter is, the Philadelphia Eagles duped us. I mean, they swooped in, like you said, and they stole something from us. And here's my question to you, because We talked about Mekhi Lemon when we were talking about the wide receiver options. This was before Michael Pittman. This was before anything. We talked about Mekhi Lemon. What is your opinion on if we would have taken Mekhi Lemon there? What would you have thought in that moment if that historical branch would have actually happened?
I think that I would have been more positive than what happened because, we just kind of looked like fools. Like, yeah, you said we got duped. We're hosting it and we got duped. Like that stinks. But I still wouldn't have had the best feelings about it because I don't really like Mekhi Lemon that much. I feel like he would have become a George Pickens or a Chase Claypool or any Steelers wide receiver since Antonio Brown. He gives off that mentality. And I think he's going to fit in fine in Philadelphia. Like that's what they go for. But I wouldn't have liked that either because, again, and we'll talk about this more in depth because this infuriates me to no end. And I'll tell you, I want your opinion on Omar Khan. But this draft, I've lost a lot of hope in him. And I am really questioning him of how much say did Mike Tomlin have and did he have also a lot of say in these past drafts? And like, what did that look like? Because, and what was Mike McCarthy's say in this draft? Because this draft looked very interesting and just very not my favorite, I'll say. But the fact that because the two guys I think we talked about the most in our last episode was Casey Concepcion, your favorite, and Denzel Boston, my favorite. And guess where they both are? The Cleveland freaking Browns. And we let that happen. And we easily could have taken one of them the very next pick. So I want to know your thoughts on that and your thoughts on Omar Khan after this draft.
I think you broke it down great because I had this was a talking point of my own. Here's what I'll say, and I'm right there with you. I think if they would have ended up drafting Mekhi Lemon, I think it would have been a mistake. So in a weird roundabout way, I feel like that history just kind of was on our side, but at the same time, it's just not. Because you saw what happened. I don't know if you noticed this in the moment, but I noticed this. The Steelers had less than a minute left to pick after Mekhi Lemon was stolen away from them. They did not pivot to Maxi Hanachor. Like, they didn't pivot to him quickly. They did not have anybody else loaded up. And sure, with the way that the draft was moving, it's like, okay, the Cowboys aren't taking a wide receiver. There's not going to be any drama trying to figure out like who's going to be available because frankly, they were 99% sure that Mekhi Lemon was going to be available. They were so confident that they were on the phone with him. But here's the thing. They didn't even have a backup option in the event that somebody did trade up. And that's the thing I think that you're getting at is that I don't like that process because if they didn't have a backup plan, then how like sold out were they for this specific guy? And at the same time, it might have even been the wrong guy anyway. So this is just really, really strange. And here's the other thing. I love that you brought up the thing about the Browns because what happened like 15 minutes later? Yes, they took my guy, KC Concepcion. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, why didn't we just take him there? Why wasn't that the pivot? Why wasn't that the backup plan? And instead, it looked like they panicked. Like, I don't think that Hanachor, I mean, with all due respect to him, he looks like a decent player. He's probably a reach, sure, but why again, if you were so high on Mekhi Lemon to take him there, why didn't you just pivot to the next best wide receiver?
Right. Right. It makes no sense. And like, yeah, again, I really feel bad for Max because I don't think anyone's really caring about him too much because of all this that has happened. But, he looks like a good athlete and could be a good tackle. Who knows? I like him. I don't have anything against him. But still, it's like with that pick, that's the main thing that's making me question Omar Khan is like, are you serious? Like, are you seriously telling me that in this whole draft process, you didn't have a second wide receiver that you had loaded and ready to go? Like you're telling me you didn't have someone like I was texting my dad and my dad was like, I prepare more for fantasy football drafts than that right there. And it's like, this is your first round pick. I get it if in the fourth round, maybe even the third round, your guy gets taken, you're like, okay, pivot, who do we want? In the first round, when everybody but 20 people are available, like, come on. And I just think it was a complete mismanagement. And yeah, like you said, your guy was there. We should have taken another wide receiver. And we'll get into who we took for wide receiver because that's another thing that I'm not the hugest fan about either. But it just goes back to what are we doing? Like, what's going on that we're just like, I accidentally hit the right tackle button. All right. Like, what? We were talking about guards. We were talking about middle linebackers. I don't even think we drafted a linebacker. I mean, I, it, it's mind-boggling that they were that panicked by that.
Yeah. And on top of that, too, we talked about that we didn't like our slot. We didn't like number 21. And here's the thing. So your guy gets sniped, right? Okay, we don't like our options right here. Trade back. Trade back. Find a way to trade back and get some more assets. I don't know. Figure it out. But they didn't. And maybe they were trying. I don't know. Maybe nobody wanted to take their offers. I don't know. I wasn't in the room. I don't see it. But at the same time, again, why don't you have a backup option? If your guy gets sniped from you, which that happened, and it does happen in the NFL draft, like, why don't you have a backup plan? Why don't you have a team on the phone that it's like, hey, you want pick 21? Here's pick 21. Why don't you have KC Concepcion or Denzel Boston lined up right afterwards to say, okay, we're about to reach on this offensive tackle. Why don't we just take the next best wide receiver instead of the dupes in Cleveland that are going to take him? Not only just one of them, but like you said, both of them. I couldn't believe that. When I saw Concepcion taken, I was like, are you freaking kidding me? And my dad texted me, he says, your guy is going your way, meaning my way because I'm still living in Cleveland. And then, literally the next day, your guy gets taken. And I'm like, what is going on? And here's what I'll say this too, real quick. I thought the Browns had an unbelievable draft. And as mad as I am to say that, it's just the facts. They had an unbelievable draft. And even when you compare it to the draft that we could have had, or maybe even should have had, it makes me really frustrated to see what they did compared to what we did.
Yeah, I mean, it made me think: should I be worried about the Browns? Because yeah, it looks like they're rebuilding and they're ready to go. And yeah, I don't think they're going to have a quarterback, but they made a lot of picks that was like, whoa, like okay. And you saw that with them. You saw that with the Cowboys, a little bit with the Jets, where so you look at their drafts and you're like, man, like their holes are looking a lot more full. And with us, it's like, all right, we drafted I think two tackles. I don't know if we needed that. A D tackle, okay, fine. A wide receiver that is an interesting choice, okay. A quarterback that we'll get to. Like, cornerback, that was good. I will say that was good. But it was like the holes that needed to be filled, we were like refusing to fill them. And I just think that I think it was just poor execution as a whole on this draft. And we could have taken advantage, I think, of almost all of our picks in a better way. Yes, I still think there are some good picks here, but I think that we could have made every pick better. And
We talked
yeah,
about asset management. This was the prime opportunity for them to be very good at asset management. And they didn't manage their assets at all. At
no,
all. How many guys did they take? I think we took 10 guys. We said that in our draft episode, if they take 12 guys, we're going to be upset. Well, they didn't take 12 guys, but they still took 10 guys, even though they've got 70 some people already rostered. Like, there's no room for these guys. I don't know what you're supposed to do with them, but there's no room. And I don't know what they're going to do. But we're gonna have to figure it out. And the thing is, this surplus is not good. It's not going to help anything. Sure, depth is great, and we'll talk about some of the depth pieces that we did acquire. But as far as it goes, this is it's not good. It's really just not good.
no, it isn't. Because like you said, like how many of these guys are going to get cut? Realistically speaking, like just being honest, like who's actually going to make the 52-man roster out of these guys? Like these latter half of the draft picks, I don't know. Like we'll see. We'll see what they bring to the table. But again, I think that if you're not happy after that huge swap, it's like, why don't you make that trade and get back down to a spot where it's like you're more comfortable maybe taking the wide receivers that you should have taken? And I think that it almost looked like after that, I don't even know if it was maybe even before that, but like it almost looked like we were just doing this draft sitting down. Like we were just like, yeah, like we're not going to do anything until we're up and we'll make a pick. And it just was very disappointing overall and just kind of, yeah, I feel like a rough start to this McCarthy era.
Yeah, definitely very rough. And again, we're talking about Max Hanachor. Like, again, there's nothing wrong with him. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with him. He's probably a reach, like we said. He didn't actually start playing football until college, which is crazy. And it does actually promote the fact that he does have probably a very high ceiling with how well he played at Arizona State. And actually, they were talking about this in his breakdown, but he locked up the top edge rusher in this draft who ended up going number 2 overall. That was David Bailey. So this guy locked him up, which is great. That's awesome. And it's interesting, too, because now the conversation shifts to what are we going to do with Broderick Jones? He dealt with the injury at the end of last year, even though it seemed like that he was kind of on the upswing with his actual play. It seemed like before he got hurt that he was playing at a much higher level. And then Dylan Cook comes in at the end of last year, and he kind of turned some heads with the way that he played. He kind of did the thing that he needed to do against guys like Myles Garrett. Like he held his own in the NFL. And people are saying that a Hanchor maybe is the option that kind of slots in underneath of these guys and either takes the spot of Broderick Jones, or maybe he does stay on the right side, and then we move Troy Fautanu over to the left side. So there's a lot of moving parts with this piece. And again, it just goes back to the fact that it doesn't seem like that they were prepared to take this, that they were prepared to take him, so they just defaulted to what they always do and just take an offensive lineman. I mean, it's just that's what they've done in the last, 3 out of the last 4 years, I think, at this point. Because what do you got? Broderick Jones, Troy Fautanu, Derek Harmon. Is that the only other first-round pick that's bisecting all of this?
I believe so. Yeah, and Broderick Jones was a trade-up. So that is very interesting, and it makes me believe that Broderick Jones is not getting better from his injury, or it just looks like they're thinking that he's not going to be able to be the guy anymore again. So I like the idea of Fatanu going to the left and keeping Max at the right, what he's used to. And yeah, like you said, like he's a really good multi-sport athlete, which bodes well for tackles. And like, yeah, in the games that he's played, which again isn't much, but the games that he's played pretty good. So it looks like a good tackle, but yeah, again, overreaching and just unfortunate. But I do hope that he can become a staple in his O-line.
Hopefully so, and maybe that is a quick and easy fill for the hole that we had in the offensive line. That's remaining to be seen. So that's our first not first overall, but first pick, Maxi Hanachor out of Arizona State. And then in the second round, we traded up. Interestingly, after we got ourselves duped by Philly, we traded up with Indianapolis to select Jeremy Bernard, a wide receiver out of Alabama. Now, we needed a wide receiver, and it seems like the Steelers were also on that train of knowing that we needed a wide receiver. And then after we got sniped, we didn't pivot to a wide receiver originally, and so then we saw all these other guys get taken, and then we said, okay, our guy is Jeremy Bernard, and we need to trade up to get him. He's out of Alabama. He's been pretty darn good. I mean, he's a very athletic guy, a very talented wide receiver. But what does this pick do for you at the slot that we got him at?
It doesn't do too much, honestly, because I'll say this. There are some green flags. There are some red flags. The green flags is he's a great athlete. He was at Alabama. You have to be at a good level to be doing that. He basically beat out Williams, who was the cover of college football and was going to be the best wide receiver alongside Jeremiah Smith. And Jeremy Bernard became the more featured guy, which that's impressive of itself. And yeah, I mean, he looks like he just makes plays happen. But my negative is one, they kind of used him like Debo Samuel. And with the team that we have right now, we don't really have room for Debo Samuel with Rico Dowdle and Jalen Warren. I don't necessarily like, and we just also drafted a fullback who can get in the receiving game. So I feel like there's too much going on back there if we want to use him like a Debo Samuel. And then ultimately, if he's going to be in the slot, which is where he would be because Pittman and Metcalf will be on the outside, I don't think that his niche is a slot wide receiver. He doesn't have insane speed. He doesn't, I feel like, rely on that middle of the field. Like, I feel like that's not necessarily his spot. And I think that there were other guys, obviously we let them go, but there were other guys where it's like, I mean, even Mekhi Lemon, who I wouldn't have been happy with, but it's like those guys, it's like, yeah, put them in the slot and watch what they can do. But him, I don't really know how much his skill and talent fits with the specific need that we needed in the wide receiver room. So though I think like he has some upside for sure because of how talented he is, I don't know where we're intending to use him.
Yeah, that's interesting. Now, I will say that based on his analysis is that one of the things that I do like about him is that they say that he's a very precise route runner. And
Okay.
obviously we'll talk about the quarterback situation again, because again, it's a conversation, but in the event that Aaron Rodgers does come back, precise route running is valuable, especially to a guy like Aaron Rodgers, who we saw a lot of times last year was very frustrated with the lack of precision in the route running department. So maybe there is some upside. And like you said, there are green flags. There are some red flags, though. And again, it seems like the process is kind of what we're more so concerned about here. Again, if you're looking for high quality options, sure, this is a option, but it's not maybe the best option that you could have come away with in this draft. Is he a decent option to be like that number 3 guy? I think absolutely. I think a guy maybe like Makai Lemon, especially with the the head case that he might seem to be, if he's behind a guy like DK Metcalf as well as a guy like Michael Pittman, how much do you really think that he's going to like being a number 3? Because we've got Pittman and Metcalf locked up long term now. So it's not like he's going to just graduate into a higher role. He's going to be in that role for the majority of his rookie contract. So I almost like this just out of the fact that I don't think there's going to be the drama there that an early round wide receiver would have with this current state of the wide receiver room. So it is an interesting little tidbit here because I kind of like this as a wide receiver 3 choice. But again, like you said, there are a little bit of concerns with just how he's going to be used.
Yeah, and I think those are a lot of great points. And if we use him well in a good schematic way, I think that I agree. My biggest concern is just how we're going to end up using him because I think that he is a really good athlete. And yeah, it's a good point that if he's not the number 1 or the number 2, he could definitely fill a number 3 role.
All right. Are we back to talking about quarterbacks?
I think we very sadly are.
Well, here we go, David.
Here we go.
In the 3rd round, with the 12th pick, the Pittsburgh Steelers drafted 6'5", 228-pound quarterback out of Penn State, Drew Aller. Hooray! David, you're so happy. Look at the smile on your face. He loves it, guys. Everybody, David loves it. Oh man, where do we start? You go first. This is your baby, David.
All right. So I think that there was maybe only one person that I liked less than him, and it was Carson Beck, I think. And I literally, he was the guy, every time we talked about quarterbacks, I was like, yeah, I don't really like any of them, but, these couple guys you cannot pick. You cannot pick. And every time Drew Aller was on that list. And, of course, we picked Drew Aller. And it's just ridiculous. It's insane because guess what? Aaron Rodgers is coming back. We just basically trapped him to where if he wants to play football again, he has to come back to us. And I'm just sick of it. I'm sick of this game. I'm sick of whatever. Me and Mike McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers, we text. Yeah, we text. We're buddies. Shut up and just do the dang thing. And don't draft another rookie quarterback if you're going to do the thing and bring Aaron Rodgers back. Because now everyone's like, it's the battle for quarterback. Is it going to be Will Howard or Drew Aller? It's going to be neither. Okay? Why are we even playing this up? Aaron Rodgers will be back. This pick aggravated me to no end. And the fact that it was our 3rd pick of the whole draft, this is what we did with our 3rd pick. This was just a horrible decision, especially again, if you think you have what you have been saying with Will Howard, and if you think Aaron Rodgers is going to come back, which you've basically been saying this entire time, why? Why take this guy, especially because I think he's not good?
I don't know what they're doing. I just don't know what they're doing. And here's the thing. I have this feeling that it's a little Kenny Pickett 1.5 type of thing because the draft is in Pittsburgh and there's not a lot of Pitt fans that exist. But there's a whole lot of Penn State fans, and I feel like this was the pressure of the fact that it was in Pittsburgh and Drew Aller was sitting there, and we kind of need a quarterback, but not really, but still kind of really do need a quarterback. And so we took Drew Aller because we felt like we had to, and now here we are. We've got 4 quarterbacks. How many of them are actually any good? Nobody knows. Mason Rudolph is at the bottom of the totem pole, and they've got the Ohio State-Penn State rivalry duking it out for quarterback. Oh, and by the way, did you know that Drew Aller was a lifelong Browns fan and that he couldn't even put on the Pittsburgh Steelers hat after he got drafted by them? Are you freaking kidding me? This is ridiculous, David. This is absolutely ridiculous.
It's horrible. And I remember, I was already upset, and then I saw that. He was a lifelong Browns fan and stuff. And it's like, what are they doing to us? What are they actually doing to us that this is their decision and that this is, what's the goal here? We have 4 quarterbacks. Who knows? Who knows if any of them are good? We're never going to know because we don't take the time to actually just pick one. I mean, I'm so sick of this quarterback, wheelhouse of it was Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett. All right, forget Mitch Trubisky. We got Kenny Pickett. all right, forget Kenny Pickett. We have Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. Forget both of those guys. We're going to get Aaron Rodgers and draft a guy, and then we're just going to draft another guy. And it's like, what is going on? What is actually what are you doing? Like, what actually is making sense? I don't know. I don't know what's making sense here because none of it seems to be making sense. And this pick is just like the cherry on top of fantastic. Like, and you know me, I like to give the benefit of the doubt with almost everybody. Like I was just talking about Marcelo Zuna. We were talking and I was just like, I hope he can turn it around. Like I'm always like, oh, I hope that they can do it. No, I don't have hope for Drew Aller. I've seen enough at Penn State. He's not going to do anything. And it's just like, I mean, talk about the first round being a disappointment. And then they were like, oh, wait, like, hold my beer, hold my Iron City beer. Here comes another one. And it was just horrible.
Absolutely grand disappointment. I'm looking at this right now. A career 1-7 record against AP top 10 opponents in college, and in most of those marquee matchups, had a completion percentage of around 50%. Like, I get it. The guy has a lot of, he's got an arm. That's great. He can throw to some tight windows. That's great. But you look at him and just the fact of the matter that he just doesn't play well in big games, and he can't just get over the hump when he needs to. This is like a young Dak Prescott on a team that can't afford a young Dak Prescott. I would have taken Dak Prescott himself because he's at least an NFL caliber player and that he can win in the regular season. I don't know if this guy's built for the NFL. And we just took him in the third round and we're just going to act like this is all fine and dandy. I don't get it. I just don't get it.
Right. And I think one thing, now who knows, maybe they already had conversations with Will Howard and maybe they let him know and prefaced what was going to happen. But one thing is do you think do you think that your actions don't have repercussions? Because again, it's like what happened, I feel like with, Ben, anytime we took a quarterback with Ben, he was kind of like, what the heck are you doing? This isn't going to happen. I'm still going to be here. And obviously, Will Howard and Ben are very different. But with Will Howard, it's like, wait, I'm the guy. You guys love me. A lot of people in the office love me. Like, you think I could be the next guy and you draft someone the very next year? I haven't even seen a snap. Like, what does that do? Like, what? Like, if I was Will Howard, I'd be like, what the heck? Like, do you just forget me, I guess? Like, I don't understand how they don't see this. Like, how they don't understand that the quarterback room is extremely delicate. And I feel like it's like how people play Madden. And it's just like, I just want my four guys so that if one of them isn't working, I can just switch them out and just see what happens because it's fun to play with different guys. That's not how the NFL works. You just pick one. That's all you need. So, yeah, horrible. What bottom? That was the bottom, rock bottom of the draft.
On top of that, he's coming off of an ankle injury, so he didn't even play the back half of the season. So, I mean, obviously that they were in the playoff in 2024, and I think that's a lot of where his stock came from. But even at that point, it's like after that, his draft analysis literally says he peaked in 2024. If you peak in 2024, what does that have bearing on in late 2026 and 27? Like, if we're peaking in 2024, why don't we take somebody else? Like, I don't know. I can't think of a good name right now, but I wish I could find a name of some dude that just peaked in 2024. Can you think of a name? What quarterback peaked 2 or 3 years ago?
I mean, you could argue because he got to the playoffs too. Cade Klubnik, I think that Drew Aller, Cade Klubnik, Garrett Nussmeier, yeah, in 2024, they all looked pretty high stock. Like they were like, yeah, these guys look good. But the problem is they all tanked in 2025, and so it's and also the reason why Drew Aller's up there is because the college football playoffs, they beat a G5 Boise State and barely beat them. So I don't even want to hear it. And then he makes one of the worst interception throws to lose to Notre Dame. So come on, really? Is it that impressive? No. So I just I don't really see where any of his stock comes in, especially like you said after the injury. I think that's why I don't understand because Nick Singleton, the Penn State running back, who had an amazing 2024, his stock went way down, and I don't even remember what round he got taken in. But it's why didn't that get adjusted to Drew Aller too? And I think that this is gonna end horribly. I mean, this is not going to go well.
Well, it already started terribly, so it can't do anything but end terribly, I don't think. So
Right.
what a pick. What a pick, David. What a pick in Drew Aller. Now, 9 picks later, the Steelers decide to reach for a cornerback out of Georgia. We love Georgia, Dalen Everett. David, let me just read his draft analysis for you. Can you humor me for like 2 minutes as I read his draft analysis?
I can, yes.
Okay, let's read his draft analysis. Everett is a fluid boundary quarterback with some length, and he tested well at the combine. He has the speed to run with most wide receivers, but looks more comfortable when he can keep everything in front of him in coverage, as he can really struggle with his back to the ball. Everett will play through a receiver's hands at the catch point when in position, though he needs to do a better job of turning his head and locating the ball in the air. He shows average anticipation on route development, getting out of breaks a step slow. That allows receivers to create separation. Everett can take some poor angles, which has proved costly on occasion. In run support, he is not the most physical tackler, but is willing.
Every time I was like, okay, it's not going to get worse than that. Oh, wait, it just gets worse. What? What? He was the one that I was kind of optimistic about because I was like, Georgia has a good defense. I watched some of his highlights. So I was like, all right, he's made some plays. But holy smokes, that sounds horrible. That sounds horrible. And that's in the third round.
It was. It was indeed in the third round. Absolute reach. I mean, it says here, according to ESPN, which again, don't give a whole lot of credibility to any one source without, comparing it to other ones. But this was a round pick like 70. And he was the 112th ranked pick in this entire draft. So again, with one of these third round picks, one of the 3 third round picks that we had, we decided to take Dalen Everett, who had probably the most comedic pre-draft analysis that I've ever seen in my entire life for a guy that's not from the 7th round.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty insane. And I'm very interested just to see how this develops because I watched a little bit of the press conference with Patrick Graham talking about him, and Patrick Graham was really excited about him, excited about the style of football he plays. So now I'm curious to be like, all right, like what's actually going to happen here? It sounds like with the way he can't turn back to the ball and doesn't play the ball, it sounds like we just got a JPJ all over again, just gonna draw some penalties. So I I mean, again, it's like, all right, fine. Like, yeah, I mean, what are we doing? What are we doing? This is horrible.
I mean, it's more depth, and we did say that we need some cornerback depth, and I feel like our cornerback room is still decent as it already is, and maybe this is kind of a project that they're willing to work on, and if that's the case, that's fine, and I think that's kind of what it boils down to in my mind. So, as comedically harping on him as I was, we do have Jamel Dean, we do have Joey Porter Jr., who's coming off a career year. If this is the third guy or maybe the fourth guy, you insert Asante Samuel Jr. in there. This is a project, and I'm okay with it being a project. I just hope he doesn't get a DUI and get a speeding ticket because, that's what happens to every single player that comes out of Georgia. So that's my only concern. But again, it seems like a project, and I'm okay with it. I'm not necessarily like upset about it. I just thought it would be funny to read that draft analysis because I couldn't stop laughing when I first read it.
Yeah, I mean, that's hilarious because before you read that, I was feeling real good about him. I was like, I like him. I was like, at best, he's going to be our third corner or, likely fourth. And it's like, I think that he could add some good depth. But yeah, I mean, that is hilarious. And, track record with Georgia as a whole is not good. But our track record recently, Broderick Jones and George Pickens, is quite horrible.
Yeah. All right. Our final third round pick, which I believe it was a traded pick with Seattle. We picked up actually a very decent offensive tackle, Jennings Dunker, with probably the most majestic red mullet you've ever seen in your entire life. And for me, that has rocked a mullet for probably, I think, the last 5 years. He's a man right out of my own heart. And this out of all the picks that we made in this draft, this one might be my favorite. It might be just the guy that really makes this draft not nearly as bad as we thought overall.
I completely agree. I was like checking the draft board that day and I scrolled down, saw our pick, and I saw Jennings Dunker. And I was like, okay, I love that name. But then I saw the picture and I was like, I think I'm in love. I was like, this is incredible. And then I watched some highlights and I was like, I don't think I've ever seen a guy want to hit somebody more than Jennings Dunker. So I think that this is a great pick and like definitely is like, okay, at least we got this guy because this seems like a very solid pick and someone that I'm really excited about.
He seems very versatile. And I mean, again, if you just watch his highlights, you'll see just how well this guy moves. He is a straight up athlete. And like you said, he looks like he just wants to hit somebody and really just be a stonewall. And again, this guy looks like he was made to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. If any other team drafted this guy, I think it would have been a disservice to himself. This guy is meant to be a Steeler. And like you said, absolutely flawless offensive lineman name.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's like 10 out of 10. You coming from Iowa, so he's already used to the black and gold. And I'll be interested to see. I know he's listed as a tackle, but I feel like with his build and his body type, I feel like he could even fill the left guard spot if, the way he moves too. So that would be interesting to see. Like if we do Max and Fatanu at the tackles, it's like if we move him to that opening at guard, I'll be interested to see how we'll use them. We'll use these two tackles we got.
Yep. Love the pick. I think you love it too. And honestly, like, this is a little bit of a redeeming quality in the overall complexion of this draft. So very good pick. I think we both agree on at the 32nd pick of the third round. Now we go to the fourth round, our lone fourth round pick, which we did trade out of the fourth round for another previous pick. Caden Wajan. I believe that's how you say his name. The wide receiver out of Iowa. And maybe it's Wetjen. Caden Wetjen or Wajan. I will stick with Wetjen because he's a white boy, and I feel like that's the way that we can go here. Interesting pick to say the least. He's 5'9", 193 pounds out of Iowa. He's a wide receiver, but the reality is that he's a return man, and it seems like that is pretty much the entirety of his bag. Do you really think that a return man in the fourth round makes a lot of sense? Because it seemed like that this guy was at least a good bit of a reach.
Yeah, I don't. And like, I get the point of like, all right, our return game has been horrible for a good amount of time. And you want to figure that out. But I guarantee you, this guy would have been here later in the draft. Who knows if he even gets taken in the draft, honestly, because who's dying for a return man? Because yeah, ESPN's analysis and something else I read is like this guy's probably not going to see the field at wide receiver. Like he doesn't have the speed for it, and yeah, he's just not going to be a wide receiver, but he's a really good return man. So it's like, okay, cool. Like we definitely needed a return man, especially now that Calvin Austin's gone, because I was always screaming Calvin Austin to let him be a returner. But now that he's gone, we genuinely had nobody. But yeah, I'm just like, this guy would have been there in the seventh round if you wanted him.
Yeah, I agree. Now, he did have 6 special teams touchdowns this last 2 years, which that's pretty significant, and that's great. And if he does find his niche as a return man, I mean, I think about guys like Miles Boykin out of years past that, really didn't have a whole lot of utility outside of special teams, which I think that the Steelers, especially in the absence now of Danny Smith, like I feel like we do still need to be very cognizant of what we're doing on special teams because you lose guys like you lose guys like Danny Smith, and you still have to figure things out in his stead. So in a way, I think this does fill a need, but it is just a little strange that they took him so high.
Yeah, I agree. I think that like at the end of the day, I honestly like the pick. I don't like how early it was, but I like the pick because it is something we need. And like you said, like, yeah, lots of touchdowns returned. And he just has that ability. It'll be interesting to see how he does with the XFL version of kickoffs. But yeah, I mean, the best returner in NFL history, Devin Hester, couldn't play wide receiver. He made it work just as a return man. So we'll see. I like him overall, and I think that it's good that we finally have somebody. We're not putting our running backs back there, so that'll be nice. That'll be a nice change.
Moving down into the 5th round, Riley Nowakowski, a tight end out of Indiana, which you said he kind of profiles a little bit more as a fullback. Now, talk about this guy and what he kind of does for this offense specifically, because it is an interesting pick, taking a tight end prescribed, but not necessarily exactly a tight end.
Yeah, it is an interesting pick, and I think that he almost profiles as maybe a better version of Connor Hayward because I feel like I remember watching Michigan State with Connor Hayward and then watching Indiana. Like they very much play similar roles. Like, yeah, sure, they lined up as fullback a decent amount of times, but they'd be getting handed off the ball, they'd be getting the ball thrown to. Like, it's just an extra versatile weapon that you can have out there. And I think that obviously he's coming off a national championship. He was a part of a great team. It'll be interesting to see again how we use him because we have Darnell Washington, we have Pat Fryermuth. He's not going to see the field in like a traditional tight end way. So I think he'll basically be the replacement for Connor Hayward, which I am interested to see what our offense will even look like with Mike McCarthy at the helm. Like, I don't know. Some of it is like, why are we drafting guys that looks like we're filling roles for an offense that we shouldn't be having anymore? That's my question because it gives me a little concern of like, wait, what do we need this? Like, is like, did we need another Connor Hayward? I thought we let him go because we'd given up on that experiment. So it'll be interesting to see again, and this is just a part of having a new coach and everything. It'll be interesting to see how we actually use some of these guys.
I think you said that very, very well. Why are we taking a guy who is replacing a guy that we lost in an offense that we should be deeming obsolete? You know,
Right.
that's you put it very, very well. And it's interesting because I didn't even think about that. But the way that you phrased that, that was very well said. And I can see that now because skill wise, it seems like he fits that mold for a Connor Hayward. But like you said, do we need another Connor Hayward? It's interesting. And again, down here in the fifth round, I believe Connor Hayward was also a fifth round draft pick. Might have been a fourth round. I think he was that Kenny Pickett draft, if I remember correctly. So, that's an interesting little thing. We're kind of going back to something that we've had that we weren't the biggest fans of, but it's a niche little gadget type of thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It really is. And in a West Coast offense that Mike McCarthy said he wanted to run, I'm not sure where it will fit. So I'll be interested to see. It's also interesting. It's funny you mentioned that Connor Hayward win with Kenny Pickett because I feel like my hopes for the draft like died after that year. Like because I feel like I was excited about Kenny Pickett that year, and I remember when we took Connor Hayward late, I was like, oh, I remember watching him. Like that's so cool. Like they're brothers and stuff. And I feel like there was at least one other person that I was excited about in that draft. And now it's like the complete 180 where I'm just like, all right, screw everything. Like what are we doing? And yeah, I think that it's been a while. Like, I wish we could go back to the 70s and like our oh, we had such high caliber drafts, and I can't remember the last time we've had a really like solid, wholesome draft.
Yeah, I agree. Moving on, we've got a sixth round selection, defensive tackle out of Notre Dame, Gabriel Rubio, a defensive tackle. And an interesting thing is that his draft analysis says that he probably doesn't profile much as an NFL caliber player. And again, it is the sixth round. You get down here, and this is you're kind of taking flyers on guys. I just don't see where he slots in. And to the point that we made, before, we had a lot of assets in this draft, and I feel like we just didn't utilize them the way that we should have. Could we have paired this sixth round pick with something else to move up in a different spot? I think we could have. But instead, we take a guy like Gabriel Rubio, who's an inside defensive lineman in a position where, like, we kind of have that covered, at least as of right now.
Right. I agree. Where it's like I feel like we have relatively good depth at defensive tackle, and you take this guy who it's like I don't know anything about him. Obviously, Notre Dame is a good defensive school, but I just am like, yeah, I don't know. He doesn't do anything for me. I don't know who's he going to beat out. Like that's the question, and it's like probably nobody that we know the name of. So yeah, I'm just like it's late in the draft. What are you going to do? But I just was like, okay, fine. Like yeah, I don't know. Especially if we think he's going to not be an NFL caliber player.
I mean, I'm thinking about guys like Logan Lee, who we took a couple of years ago that has seen the field occasionally in the last year or so. Like, you know, same position, has NFL experience, has done things in the NFL, like has registered stats in the NFL. And this just pick, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Like I get it. This is deep in the draft, but again, it goes back to my original point that I made last week. You got 12 guys in this draft that you would be taking if you don't move anybody. You don't need 12 guys. Like, that's just the thing. We've got too many guys on this roster, and it wouldn't surprise me if Rubio just doesn't make the team. Like, that's just kind of where it sits right now. So it's just really, really strange. The fact that they didn't decide to pair up any of these picks to move up anywhere else felt like a great draft to be able to do that. But again, it just comes back to, it seems like they, like you said earlier, that they drafted sitting down.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is what it feels like, unfortunately. And I was just, yeah, unimpressed. Like, even like, the pick that we like the most, Jennings Dunker, it's like he should not be the profile pick of the draft. So yeah, this doesn't necessarily get my hopes up in any type of way.
Yep. Moving into the seventh round, where we had two different selections. The first of which we took a safety out of Oklahoma, Robert Spears Jennings. And very interestingly, he had the second fastest 40-yard dash out of all the safeties in this draft. So there's an identifiable thing that they did. Obviously this guy's a project. He has some instinctual struggles, but he has some tools. And obviously the speed is something along those lines as well. A safety, we talked about it last week, how we're getting Deshaun Elliott back. We just brought in Jaquan Brisker, so safety isn't necessarily as much of a need anymore. But this guy seems like a decent project to where he has some tangible skills that they can take advantage of. And if they can develop him, then it seems like he could be a half-decent depth piece.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think that this is kind of like the cornerback that we talked about earlier, where it's like, all right, some depth here, some, potential to be a good NFL player. So it's like nothing that I'm upset with, especially late in the draft like this. I think that it's something that, like, it's not bad to add depth here, especially because we did mention, Elliott's coming off of an injury. So we'll see how he plays and how we end up using Jalen Ramsey. So I think it's good to get a depth piece.
Absolutely agree. So not terribly upset with this pick at all. I think this is a good project that we can work on. And then just a couple of picks later, with the final selection we made in this draft, out of the United States Naval Academy, we took 6 foot, 200-pound running back Eli Heidenreich. And I don't know if you saw the videos of him when he was drafted, but he came out in his Navy uniform, and obviously Steelers fans, most of which are very military oriented, and Pittsburgh in general is a very blue collar town. This seems like a very classy pick to make towards the end of this draft. Again, when you get to this spot in the draft, you're kind of just taking guys that might just compete for roster spots with no real guarantees. But again, just with the setting of the draft, it seemed like, at least in my opinion, that this was a very classy pick by the Steelers.
Yeah, I agree. I watched some of the videos. I think he's a Pittsburgh native. Was a diehard Steelers fan, and yeah, seeing him in his uniform and just being able to see the commissioner when he got out there and have the helmet, and it was a really, really cool moment. And like you said, it's late in the draft. I don't know what we'll do with him. I have a prediction of maybe he could be the guy to take the place of Miles Kilbrew, because I think that, he's athletic. It was interesting that I remember seeing when he was walking out, he was a running back, but the stats that they were showing were like receiving touchdowns and receiving yards. So I was like a little confused. I know a Navy plays just a different type of football. So I think he could potentially be an asset on special teams, but it was really cool to see that pick nonetheless, and it was a really cool moment.
So it's interesting. You're kind of profiling this guy as like a Carson Bruner late in the draft, where he might not have a niche at his natural position, but he could have a niche on special teams.
Yeah, that's the based off of look alone. That's the feel I get.
Okay. Now here's the interesting thing, and maybe this is a little bit of a stretch, but I think that this actually puts a little bit of fire under Caleb Johnson, because you get this fourth running back, so to speak. We're pretty much locked up with our top two running backs with Rico Dowdle and Jalen Warren. Caleb Johnson is kind of the third guy in this equation. I feel like Eli Heidenreich, he could maybe be the thing that either usurps Caleb Johnson or gets Caleb Johnson to really start to go to work and maybe try to realize a little bit more of his true potential.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. I totally forgot, honestly, about Caleb Johnson. So I hope that that does that because I think, you know, Caleb Johnson needs to do something because all anyone thinks when they think of him is that play in Seattle, in which if that play doesn't exist, we maybe beat the Super Bowl champions. So, and again, I was super like, I feel like I was like the most like lenient Pittsburgh fan when it came to that whole scenario because I was just like, oh, he's a rookie, like it's the coach's fault. Everyone else was like, I never want to see him on the field again. So he definitely has reason to work a little harder.
I think this might have just been a strategic pick for that very purpose. And the more that I look at it, the more that I just kind of believe that. So, and if
Yeah,
there's any other guy to fit that bill, makes sense that it's a Naval Academy guy, that it's a Pittsburgh guy, a guy that just is very happy to be in Pittsburgh. I mean, I think it's a great pick, just for the slot that it's at and for the role that it can kind of be. So, last couple of picks here in the seventh round, I'm a fan of, and a reminder that, guys like Corey Trice several years ago were also seventh round picks. So, not to say that these guys are absolutely worthless and throwaway. Like, sometimes you find diamonds in the rough down here. Not very often, actually, not often at all. But, there is reason why there are 7 rounds to the NFL draft. There's going to be some guys that work out. There's going to be some guys that not. And there's going to be some guys that develop. And, this might be the type of guy with the work ethic that you have to have when you're at an armed forces academy. This might be a guy that can work his way into something special.
yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I think that you can always look back to Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, as in like it can happen. Like you can hit gold that late. You can even look, obviously it isn't that late. But like Tom Brady, it's like, man, if you dig hard enough, you can find diamonds in the seventh and sixth round.
And here's the thing, what was so great about Tom Brady? It was nothing about his physical assets, it was his mind. The greatest
Yeah.
asset that Tom Brady had was his mind and his drive and his insatiable desire to win. Like that's why he was such a great guy. That's why he was the greatest quarterback of all time was those things that you can't teach somebody. And these are the types of picks late in these rounds where that's what you have to go after. You have to go after character and quality guys that, maybe they don't have the physical attributes, but they have the mental fortitude. And again, you look at any armed forces academy, getting in there in general is something it's very hard to do. But, especially if they're playing sports, guys like Eli Heidenreich, those are the types of guys that you want to take down here.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a great analogy because Drew Bledsoe, I think, was number one overall, and he didn't make it. He didn't make it work with Bill Belichick. Like he just couldn't get on that same level, and it was all mentality because Drew Bledsoe was a heck of a quarterback, and it was just like who was going to match that level of willingness to learn and to win, and that's all that really matters. And so, who knows? I mean, we know we've got a hard worker in Heidenreich, and we'll see what happens with these other later picks. But I would really like us, even though I'm not the most optimistic about this draft, like I would love to see us continue to put these pieces together in ways that make a great team.
All right, we've gone through them all. So, what is your final letter grade for the 2026 NFL draft for your Pittsburgh Steelers?
I will give it, and the only reason I'm putting a plus on this is because of Heidenreich and Gennings, Dunker. I'm going to give it a D plus.
Wow, a D plus. Holy smokes.
I was unimpressed. We literally said at our video before, if they don't trade for like at all in these early rounds, like we're going to be disappointed. I was very disappointed. The Mekhi Lemon thing was horrible, and then what we did after, and Drew Aller's almost unforgivable. Funny enough, there was a guy on the Steelers fan radio. He literally Super Bowl. Paul was texting us. He said if they drafted Drew Aller, he was going to quit, and they drafted Drew Aller. He ended up quitting, and then his boss like convinced him to come back. So, I mean, I'm right there with him though. Like this pick was like, do not pick this guy, please. Like I was like, they're probably going to pick a quarterback. Just don't pick him or curse him back. And they pick him. So I'm gonna go low. I feel like maybe there's a high ceiling in some guys, but I feel like this draft was a lot worse. I feel like this draft had a high ceiling, and we instead bottomed out.
It's funny because the guy that you're talking about is Andrew Filipponi. He's on 93.7 The Fan, and he said that if the Steelers draft Drew Aller that he would quit his job. And the thing is, everybody in Pittsburgh was actually hoping that that would happen so that he would quit his job, because he is one of the most maligned media people in Pittsburgh sports. And the interesting thing is, too, Paul Skeens had a perfect game going on, I believe it was Saturday or Friday nights, and he sent out a tweet saying, "Hey, everybody, Paul Skeens has a perfect game going on." And maybe you don't know this, but here's the thing. You don't say that. If you have a no-hitter or a perfect game going, you don't say anything. That is just taboo. You're not supposed to do anything. He does it for clicks. Everybody hates him for it. Paul Skeens loses the perfect game literally minutes later. And then, guess what? Last night, the Pirates were pitching a combined perfect game. He says, "Hey, everybody, the Pirates are pitching a perfect game." And then a couple of seconds later, there's a little dinker up the third base line to break it all up. And then on top of that, they blow the game in the end, and they lose last night to the Cardinals. So he is to blame not only for these two perfect game debacles, but he's also to blame for not actually quitting his job after the Steelers drafted Drew Aller. I'm sick of him. I think all of Pittsburgh is sick of him. He wrote off the Penguins before the season. He wrote off everybody. He's not a good media person in the city of Pittsburgh, and how he still has a job in general, I don't understand. But the fact that he couldn't actually quit his job just shows that he is a complete and utter failure of a media person.
That is insane. I mean, I knew that, so like my Super Bowl Paul and my dad couldn't stand him, and I don't really listen to him really at all. But the fact that he ruined not even the perfect game by Skeens, but last night's game, because I watched the highlights of that game, and that ball on the third base line that should have been foul. I mean, oh, that game was so annoying, and it was so frustrating because, yeah, like you said, like it was a great game until the bottom of the ninth or top of the ninth. And oh my gosh, yeah, I wish you would have said quit.
Yeah, I wish too. I think everybody in Pittsburgh wishes, but now we're stuck with Filipponi and Drew Aller, so we have the worst of both worlds.
We really do. So, but take Andrew Filipponi out of it. What is your grade of the draft?
You said D plus. I'm gonna say C minus only because I do kind of like the Dunker pick. I like some of our later round picks. I think that there's maybe a little bit of understanding for Jeremy Bernard and, maybe for Dalen Everett as well. So, but overall, it's not a good draft, and I don't think that you can legitimately say that it is. I mean, if we're giving it a letter grade, I think C minus is there, and I think it's low 70s. I think we're just barely above the D plus rating that you gave it. So I think you and I are fairly similar on the overall outlook of this draft, but it's just not. It's a little bit disappointing. It's not a little bit. It's actually a lot of bit disappointing. Again, especially given the fact that it was in Pittsburgh, that it was the largest attended draft in the history of the NFL, and that they got duped, and they kind of just they sat on their own hands and they tripped. They tripped over a banana peel. Like that's just the way that I'm chalking it up.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I couldn't have said it better. And like you said, like there definitely is some potential here in this draft, but I feel like I've been very optimistic of the drafts in most recent years, and I'm not going to do that this year, and I'm not going to hope for the best because I think that there is plenty to not be content with in this draft.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not content. I'm not going to pretend like I am. There's some good things, but I think the overall weight of everything is just disappointing.
Yeah, yeah, you said it.
All right, well, that's our 2026 Pittsburgh Steelers draft episode. We got the recap of all of these guys that we took. We took plenty of them. We took a lot more than we should have, but that's your recap here on the Boardman Black and Gold podcast, which is always sponsored by Zeka Enterprises, crafting furniture solutions in northwestern Pennsylvania. You can call 919-406-4679 to turn your furniture problems into furniture solutions. Any final thoughts before we get out of here, David?
I can't wait for all this Drew Aller, Will Howard discussion to be completely thrown out the window once Aaron Rodgers signs in late July.
Yep, that's the truth. Well, thanks for listening to this episode of Boardman Black and Gold. Zane and David, every single Wednesday morning, all off season long. Happy to cover Steelers content for you, as well as some Pirates and Penguins. And what we're going to do, we're going to hope at this very moment at 7 o'clock on Tuesday afternoon that we can have something to talk about with our beloved Pittsburgh Penguins. We're not going to talk about it now for the fact that we want to just see what happens. So keep an eye out for some stuff on that. But as always, thanks for listening to Boardman Black and Gold. Zane and David signing out. Until next week.